Masechet Avoda Zara Daf Lamed Zayin. We're talking about the prohibition and then permission to eat oil, olive oil, that's manufactured by non-Jews. At some point long ago, there was a prohibition, and then the Mishnah taught that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and his Beit Din then permitted it. It seems that it was never accepted by the majority of the community in the first place, and therefore the later Beit Din came and made it official that it's now permitted. And so we're going to continue a story about this. Mistamich ve'azil Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah achitfed Rabbi Simlai Shema'eh. A story about Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah. That's the grandson of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the redactor of the Mishnah. He was walking on the road and leaning on the shoulder of Rabbi Simlai, his attendant. Amar lo Simlai, lo ha'ita emesh bebet hamidrash keshehitarnu et hashemen. And Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah told Rabbi Simlai, you were absent yesterday from the Bet HaMidrash when we permitted oil of non-Jews. You weren't there to see this important event. There's some kind of contradiction, seems, between the Mishnah that says that it was Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the last generation Tana, who permitted it, and this story here that says it was Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah, the grandson of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Who is it that permitted the oil? It could be it was a two-step process, so maybe both were involved, and so some of the Rishonim deal with this, and so it's possible that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi first permitted it, but still not everybody accepted the permission, and then Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah, his grandson, followed up and pushed it forward again, and then the permission was accepted. Okay, in any case, it's attributed to both of them. So he says, you were absent yesterday. Amar lo b'yamenu tatir af et hapat. And Rabbi Simlai says, in our time, may you also permit bread of non-Jews. So Rabbi Simlai is not only saying, Chazak u'baruch, good job in permitting the oil, I wish that you would also permit bread. It's a very difficult thing to do, to always have to find oil manufactured by Jews and bread manufactured by Jews, so I hope you'll permit that as well. Amalu imken karulan bet dina sharia. But Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah said, no, we can't do that, because otherwise people will call us a liberal court, and we don't want to have that name, and then people won't take us seriously anymore. So we can't permit so many things. And how do we see a precedent that if a court permits too many things, it will be called a liberal court, and you should be careful with that? Te'tanan is a Mishnah Masechet Eduyot. Ha'id Rabbi Yosef ben Yoezer ish sereda al el kamsa dachan. Rabbi Yosef ben Yoezer, one of the early sages of the Tanaim, said that this certain type of locust called El Kamsa is kosher. Here it is. This is we're going to discuss what it looks like in a second. And so this locust, number one, is a kosher species of locust. Some locusts are kosher, some are not kosher. Not so easy to distinguish between one and the other. So he said this one is kosher. Val mashke bet mitbachaya dachan. And furthermore, the liquids that are in the slaughterhouse of the Bet HaMikdash, in part of the Bet HaMikdash, the northern part, that's where they bring all the animals to slaughter them. And when they slaughter them, first of all, there's a lot of blood, and then they wash everything, so there's a lot of water. These liquids, the blood and the water that are in the Bet HaMikdash, are pure, are tahor. Gemara will discuss this further as well. Generally, liquids are very susceptible to tum'ah. They can receive tum'ah and impart tum'ah on other things, but some of these laws are d'oraita, some are d'rabanan. So here's a special law that when it comes to the Bet HaMikdash, we're lenient and say that all these liquids are going to be deemed tahor. Outside the Bet HaMikdash, we're stringent to say tameh, because we want people to keep away from tum'ah on an extra level, so we make the liquids tameh. However, you don't want to be very stringent in the Bet HaMikdash, because we don't want tum'ah to spread in the Bet HaMikdash. This has to be a tahor area. And therefore, these liquids in the Bet HaMikdash are tahor. That's number two. Val dikrav lemita mesa'av v'karule Yosef sharia. And also, someone who comes near and touches a dead body will become tameh. Now, it seems that that's already a Torah law. law. So the Gemara will discuss that as well. It also seems that this is a stringency. He's saying that someone who touches a corpse is impure, not tahor. So the Gemara will discuss in what way this is actually a leniency. In any case, the point is that Rabbi Yosef ben Yoezer said three things, three leniencies, and they called him Yosef Sharia, Yosef the permissive one. And so it's not good to have a reputation of being lenient all the time, because then people won't take your other laws seriously. It's not good to be called stringent all the time, because they say, oh, that person's always stringent. You want to call it like it is. And so it wants to be careful not to be permissive about too many things. And so Rabbi Yehuda Nisi'ah is quoting that as well. Says, listen, this was a big thing that we permitted oil of non-Jews. If we go ahead and permit bread of non-Jews also, then people will just say, that's a liberal court. Can't take them seriously. Amar lehatam shira telat umor shira hada. Rabbi seem like counters. No, Yosef ben Yoezer, he permitted three things, and that's why he says three is too many. But you, so far, Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah, have only permitted one thing, oil. Visharemor hada acharite akati tarten havu tehavyan. And if you permit one more thing, bread, which I'm putting in a request that you should permit the bread of non-Jews, then that will only be two things. And two things is okay. Just three things is too many. But Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah says, actually, I already permitted something else that you don't know about. So what is this other thing? So Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah already permitted some other thing, and also oil. So that's it. He's at his max. He doesn't want to permit bread, because then that'll be too many things. They'll be known as too liberal. Ditnan, zegitech im lo bati mikan ad shenem asar chodesh umet betoch shenem asar chodesh eno get. The Mishnah in Masechet Gitin teaches that if someone, let's say husband, is going away on a trip or is going out to war overseas, and he's not sure if he's going to come back, or maybe he might get lost for a long time, he doesn't want his wife to be stuck and be an aguna. So before he leaves, he says, here is your get. If I do not return from now within 12 months. If I don't come back in 12 months and you have no idea where I am, so then you'll be able to get remarried. He's giving her that protection. Okay, but here's the complication. In the meantime, he died. After 4 months, they get a message back. Actually, he died. Now, since he died, so now, they're not married anymore because he's dead. But the question is, can she go ahead and remarry because she got a get, or is it subject to Yibum and Chalitza? Let's say this guy, the husband who went away, he has no sons, but he has no children, but he does have a brother. And so if he died before the get comes into effect, so then she is a widow and she has to do Yibum or Chalitza, which might be a pain. The brother-in-law might be give her a hard time with that. On the other hand, she did get a get, and maybe if she waits 12 months, or maybe right away, will the get work retroactively? How does it work? So the Mishnah says, eno get. There is no divorce here because he died before the divorce could come into effect. The divorce can only come into effect after 12 months, but he died before that. Therefore, she is a widow, and as a widow, she's subject to the rules of Yibum and Chalitza. Vetane Allah. However, there is a teaching on that Mishnah that says, V'rabotenu hitiruha linaseh. Ve'amrina, and my Rabotenu, Amar Rav Yehuda, Mashmuel bet dina tesharu mishcha. Even though the original law said it's not a get, the sages came and permitted her to marry even without Yibum and Chalitza. In other words, some sages later on said, we're going to consider this get to be valid, even though he died before the 12 months, but it's evident that since he's dead, he's not going to come back, and therefore, at some point, either right now or maybe after 12 months, the get will come into effect, and therefore she's a divorcee. A divorcee does not have to do Yibum Chalitza, she can marry right away. That's what the sages later on said. And we wondered, who are these sages? And Rav Yehuda said, in the name of Shemuel, the Bet Din that permitted oil is the same Bet Din that permitted her to get married. Well, we know who permitted oil. We just said, Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah already gave this important leniency for a woman who has a get that says, if I don't come back within 12 months, that is a get, even if he dies in the meantime. And that's why the Yehuda Nesiah told her to be simlai. Listen, I already permitted 2 things, so I cannot be the one to permit a 3rd thing of bread. Sabrila could be Yoseh. Now, how did Rabbi Yehuda Nesiah permit her to get married? What is the legal reasoning? He follows the opinion of Rabbi Yoseh Damar Zemano shel shtar mochiach alav, that the date that's in a document testifies to when it should come into effect. This get, the guy, let's say he's going away on July 23rd, 2025. So he writes that date in the get. Today, July 23rd, 2025. If I don't come back from now and before 12 months from now, then this will be your get. Now, it's not clear when it should come into effect. Is it from now retroactively? Only after 12 months? In the middle, if you hear that I die? It doesn't say. Rabbi Yosef says we're going to follow the date in the get. And since the date in the get says today, the day that he's going away, then that means that retroactively applies, and she is divorced already from before, and therefore she can get remarried without Yibum al Chalitza as soon as she hears that her husband's dead. Because since he's dead, for sure, he's not going to come back within 12 months. Or it could be maybe she has to wait 12 months to know that, so that the condition gets triggered. But even if you say that, still it will work retroactively from the date in the document. Kol siyato. And Rabbi Abba, the son of Rabbi Chia bar Abba, said that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi taught in accordance with Rabbi Yoseh, even though people did not agree with him during his lifetime. That's one version, she'ato, or siato, his colleagues did not agree with him, but he did say that. Again, here, is that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi or Rabbi Yehuda Nisi'ah? Actually, it means the same thing. HaNasi is Hebrew, Nisi'ah, by putting an aleph at the end, aleph hey at the end, that's just an Aramaic saying HaNasi. So they could be called the same thing. Anyway, one or the other, let's say Rabbi Yehuda Nisi'ah, he ruled according to Rabbi Yoseh, even though his colleagues did not agree. But the point is that he did permit it, and this is the reasoning, because he follows the date that's in the get. Amar le Rabbi Elazar lahu sabah, ki sherituha le'altar sherituha de la'ateh, or de malacha shnemasar chodesh taha ikayam le'tena'eh. Okay, now to clarify this permission, even if you follow this opinion of Rabbi Yoseh as Rabbi Yehuda Nisi'ah does, and permits her to get married, the question is, does she have to wait at all? So Rabbi Elazar asked a certain elder, this elder was there, a member of the court of Rabbi Yehuda Nisi'ah, and so he should remember. He says, when Rabbi Yehuda Nisi'ah permitted her to marry without Yibum al Chalitza as a divorcee, did he mean that immediately after she gets the report that the husband died, since there's no way he's going to come back before 12 months because he's dead, so she can get married even right now and doesn't have to wait? Or do we say, well, no, the condition did not come true yet? Even though we know for sure it will come true, it still hasn't come true yet. So therefore, you have to wait 12 months till July 22nd, 2026. And then once he doesn't come back by that point, you see the condition is fulfilled. And then retroactively, you can say that she was divorced from the date in the get. But maybe she has to actually wait until the 12 months are up. Because only then is the condition fulfilled. That was the question that they asked. Now we wonder, why did he ask about this statement over here of the permission that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi gave? Why did he not ask about the Mishnah itself? Ditnan. Harezek yitech me'achshav im lo bati mikan ad 12 chodesh. Umet betoch 12 chodesh have get da ikayam le tena'eh. The Mishnah taught that if someone gives his wife a get and says, from now, this is the different variation on the case of the Mishnah that we saw just now. If he says, from now, if I don't come back, from now until 12 months. So since it says retroactively, for sure, everyone would agree that she's going to be considered a divorcee, and she will be able to marry without Yibum or Chalitza. And so if in this such a case, when he dies within 12 months, it definitely will be a get, and it definitely will work retroactively because it says me'achshav, because the condition is fulfilled. Since he's dead, he's not going to come back. That's where we should ask the question. When it says, yeah, that's a get in that case, but when can she get remarried? Is it immediately when she hears that the husband is dead? Because he's definitely not coming back. He's dead and buried. There's no way he's coming back, so we can assume that the condition will be fulfilled and we can allow her to get married even from now. Or maybe we have to wait till the 12 months are actually up, even though we know he's not going to come back, but still it hasn't happened. So we have to wait till literally the condition is fulfilled, and then we can apply retroactively that the get is good and allow her to get married then. So the question is, it's a question on the question. Why did Rabbi Elazar ask this elder about what happened in the Yehuda Nasi's court? Did he mean it now or wait after 12 months? You could have asked the question already on the Mishnah. And the answer is, you're right. He could have, Rabbi Elazar could have asked about the Mishnah, but since he was speaking to this elder, and this elder was in that court, so he was asking, you were in that court, did this question come up? Did they discuss this? And so that's why, that was the context of the question. And that's why he asked it. But you're right, the same question would apply also to that case of the Mishnah that says me'achshav. Amar Abaye, hakol modim lichsheteseh chama menartika lechi nafka ka'amar la vechi ma'it belela belelya get lachar mitahu. So Abaye is going to begin to answer this question by limiting the cases, categorizing the cases. Everybody would agree that if someone gives a get and says, this is your get once the sun emerges from its sheath, so he means that she would only be divorced once the sun rises in the morning. If he says language like that, then it means when it comes out in the morning. Therefore, if the husband died at night, then this get comes after the death. So she's considered a widow because he died first, and then the get will not take effect at all because there's no get that comes after death. Death already makes them separated, and you can't give a get after a person dies. And so in that case, when he says that it will only take effect at sunrise, then it does not take effect before, and there is no get after death. She has all the laws of a widow. If he says on condition that the sun will come out of its sheath, if he says on condition, he just wants that condition to be fulfilled, but it will take effect retroactively from now. I'm giving you a get now. It will take effect from now, on condition that this happens. Okay, the sun is going to come up, obviously. So then, this is true. It will be a good get. She'll be considered a divorcee. Now, if he dies in the middle of the night, surely we're going to parse this as a condition, and this get is retroactively takes effect while he was from the time when he was alive. And this follows Rav Huna. Anytime someone says on condition, it's the same as saying from now. The sun coming out is not saying you have to wait till the sun comes out. It's just a condition. But I'm giving it to you now, and I want it to take effect now, as if I said from now. Even if I didn't say from now, I'm only making this thing that happens in the future a condition for its effectiveness, but it should take effect from now once that condition is true. And so everybody would agree with that case also. But this language is somewhere in between the previous two formulas, if the sun comes out. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi or Nasi'ah follows the opinion of Rabbi Yosef that if we're not sure what he means, look at the date in the get. And the date is the earlier one, so it's the same as saying me'achshav, and it works retroactively. Ke me'hayom im mati. Ke me'achshav im mati. It's the same as if he says, from today, if I die, or from now if I should die. V'Rabbanan let lehu de Rabbi Yosef v'avaleh Whereas according to the sages, they don't follow the bioseh, that we follow the date in the get, and therefore this case of if the sun rises is the same as saying this is your get if I die, plain and simple, and that is not a valid get, because if you say this is your get if I die, that means once I'm dead, then you get the get, but you can't give a get after death, and that type of get is not valid because it will only take into effect. It will only come into effect after he dies, and there is no get after he dies. And so the machloket, although Abaye is clarifying that in the more extreme cases, one way and the other, everybody agrees. But in this in-between case, when he just says if this should happen, that is where we have a machloket. Gufa. Now we return to that Mishnah from Masechet Eduyot that we mentioned earlier, and we analyze it in depth. Ha'id Yosef ben Yoezer ish sereda al el kamsa dachan, val mashke bet be mit bachaya dachan, val di yikrab lemetab mesaab, vekarule Yosef Sharia. Yosef ben Yoezer. He's actually not called Rabbi Rabbi Yosef ben Yoezer because he was from the earlier sages, from the time of the Zugot, before they had the title Rabbi. He testified that this type of locust is kosher, that's called El Kamsa, and also that the liquids in the slaughterhouse in the Bet HaMikdash are pure. The word dachan is used for both, but in different meanings. Here, tahor can mean kosher, but the next one, tahor, means ritually pure. And someone who comes close and touches a dead body will be tameh, and they called him Yosef Sharia. My El Kamsa. Now, what is this bug that's called El Kamsa? Rav Papa Amar Shoshiba, Rav Chia bar Ameh Mishmeh Ula Amar Susbil. Two different interpretations. One says, Rav Papa says it's a locust that's called Shoshiba. The other one says it's a locust that's called Susbil. Now, what would be the difference between them? Rav Papa Amar Shoshiba vekami palge b'rosho aroch, mor sabar rosho aroch asur, umor sabar rosho aroch mutar. Rav Papa, who says that they're arguing about a Shoshiba, well, a Shoshiba is a locust that has a long head. And that's what they're arguing about, where the majority of the rabbis say a locust with a long head is not kosher, but Yosef ben Yoezer says that a locust with a long head is kosher. Rav Chia bar Ameh mishmeh de'ula amar susbil, whereas the other opinion that says that the locust that they're arguing about is a susbil, so according to that opinion of Rav Chia bar Ameh, if you are talking about a long-headed locust, what we called above here, Shoshiba, in fact, that type of locust, everybody would agree, is not kosher. So rather, the argument is about a locust that has its wings that barely cover most of its body. In order for it to be kosher, you need that the wings will cover the majority of the body of the locust. And so, there's two definitions of the majority. One says, that's Yosef ben Yoezer, who's more lenient, says, as long as it's covering a majority, even a minimal majority, just making it. You take out a measuring stick and you see if it's a majority, then it's kosher. So therefore, this susbiel that has just barely a majority of the body is covered by its wings, that's good enough. Whereas the other sages say it needs to be a noticeable majority, one that you look at it and right away say, oh, that's an overwhelming majority. You don't need to measure it down to the center, down to the millimeter. It's obvious that's a majority, and therefore this susbiel, it does not have a noticeable majority, and therefore they say it's not kosher. Rav Amar dachan mamash, Shmuel amar dachan milimetameh acherim, aval tumat asman yesh bahen. So the second item that Yosef ben Yoezer testified is that the liquids, the blood and the water that's in the slaughterhouse of the Bet HaMikdash are tahor. What do you mean tahor? Rav says, really, tahor, literally, totally tahor. It does not get any tumah. That blood and that water will not be tameh. We'll explain further in a minute. Shemuel, however, says, no, they can themselves become tameh. It's just that they will not impart tumah to other things. If it's not tameh if it doesn't come into any contact with anything tameh. But if it does, the liquid can become tameh, but it will not impart that tumah to other things. Rav amar dachan mamash kasava tumat mashkin de rabbanan v'chi gezu rabbanan tumah mashkin de alma av mashke bemitbachaya la gazu rabbanan. Rav says that this blood and water is going to be pure tahor no matter what, because he thinks that the general category of tumah when it comes to liquids is all the rabbanan. On the doraita level, only food can become tameh, liquids cannot become tameh at all on the deoraita level. And so the rabbis came around and they made gezerot on liquids in general outside the Bet HaMikdash, but in the slaughterhouse of the Bet HaMikdash they did not apply those gezerot because we don't want to increase tum'ah in the Bet HaMikdash, and there's kohanim and they're careful with it, and so they didn't apply the gezerot, and so therefore these liquids in the Bet HaMikdash in the area of the slaughterhouse are pure no matter what. Ushmuel amar dachan mele tameh acherim aval tumat asman yesh bein kasava tumat mashkin deoraita letameh acherim derabanan v'chi gazru rabbanan mashkin de'alma v'mashkin bemitbachaya la gazru. Shmuel, however, says that when we say that when Yosef ben Yoezer said that these liquids are tahor, he meant that they don't impart tum'ah to other things. But can they themselves become tameh? Yes, because he thinks that on a deoraita level, the Torah does talk about liquids when it comes in the context of tum'ah. Rav would have to say that all those pisukim that talk about liquids and tum'ah are talking about lehachshir, that if a food or an item gets wet, then it can it becomes susceptible to tumah. But it's not talking about the water itself, whereas Shmuel says, no, the water itself can become tameh, and liquids in general themselves can become tameh. However, they cannot impart tumah. They're the end of the line on a doraita level. The rabbis came in, were stringent, and said, no, liquids can impart tumah to other things, and that's a gezerah. But when the rabbis made the gezerah, that's only outside the Bet HaMikdash. But in the slaughterhouse of the Bet HaMikdash, they did not apply those gezerot. Yosef sharia. And the end of Mishnah says that Yosef ben Yoezer also testified that someone who touches a corpse will become tameh, and then they called him the Yosef the permitter. Yosef asarami ba'aleh. What do you mean they called him Yosef the one who permits? They should have called him Yosef the one who prohibits, because and the third thing was something that he said is prohibited, is tameh. And furthermore, what do you mean he testified that if you touch a corpse, one is tameh? That's an explicit pasuk. Whoever in open field touches someone that was slain by a sword, or someone who is dead, or the bone of a person or a grave, shall be impure for 7 days. So what is he adding? Deoraita di ikrav tameh, di ikrav bedi ikrav tahor, v'atuinu guzur afilu di ikrav bedi ikrav, v'ateu v'ukma ad deoraita. Oh, so we explain, actually there are multiple levels to the history of this law. On the deoraita level, someone who touches a dead body itself is tameh, but that person who touched the dead body, although that person becomes tameh, if he touches someone else, a third person, then that third person is tahor. Then the sages came and they made a gezerah, and they said the person who touched the dead body also becomes tameh. And then Yosef ben Yoezer said, no, we don't want to go that far. We're going to go back to the Doraita law. So when he says that someone who touches a dead body is tameh, what he means is only the person who touches the dead body is tameh. Let's call the dead body the first person. The guy who touches it is the second person. Only he is tameh. What he meant by that is, of course, he's tameh. That's deoraita. But the third guy who touches the second guy, will not become tameh. That's why he was. That's the leniency that solves both questions. It's a leniency, and that is not a doraita law. But then we challenge that answer because the third guy who touched the second guy, that's also Deoraita law, that he will be Tameh, because the Pasuk in that same chapter says, anyone who touches him becomes Tameh. So he is Tameh also. So this is a Deoraita law, so we're not adding anything new. Amaru harabanan kameh de Rava mishmeh de morzutra bered de Rav Nachman, de amar mishmeh de Rav Nachman. So the certain sages said the following answer in front of Rava, and they said it in the name of Mor Zutra, the son of Rav Nachman, who himself said it in the name of his father, Rav Nachman. So basically, some students are quoting Rav Nachman and saying this to Rava in order to solve the answer that we just asked. Deoraita dikra b'dikra b'chiburin tumat shiv'ah, shelo b'chiburin tumat ayrev. On a Deoraita level, if you have one person, guy number 2, touching the dead body, we'll call the dead body number 1, and he's touching it right now. He has his hand on the arm of the dead body. And at the same time, while he's touching the dead body, he's touching person number 3, like a chain link. Then person number 3 becomes tameh at the highest level for 7 days, as if he's touching the dead body itself. But if guy number 2 touched the dead body and then released, let go, now he's not touching it anymore, and then he touches guy number 3, then guy number 3 is tameh only for the day, and that's it. He goes to the mikveh, and at night he is tahor. That's the deoraita law. And then the other sages came and made a gezerah that even the third guy, he should be tameh for 7 days no matter what. Even if guy number 2 is no longer touching the dead body, he touched the dead body for a second earlier. Now he left and he touches a third guy. That third guy also will be tameh for 7 days. That's the Rabbanan Gezerah. And then Yosef ben Yoezer came and said, no, I'm getting rid of the Gezerah. I'm going back to the Torah law that the third guy is tameh only for 1 day. That's the leniency that he proposed. And we asked, Deoraita maihi dichtiv hanogeh bemet l'chol nefesh adam v'tameh shivat yamim uchtiv v'chol asher yiga bo hatameh yitma uchtiv hanefesh hanogat yitma ad arev hakesad chan b'chiburin. Where do we see the source for the Deoraita law that they just proposed, these sages that they proposed in front of Rava? Because the Pasuk says someone who touches the dead body itself will be tameh for 7 days. That's in verse 11. Then later on in that same chapter in verse 22, it says, anyone who touches him will be tameh. And the rest of that very pasuk says, someone who touches him will be tameh only until night. So which one is it? Because without the third verse, you'd assume that the third person who touches the second person will be tameh. Sounds like the same thing, 7 days. So what do you mean if when you say it, the rest of the verse says only till nighttime? How do you resolve all these parts of the pasuk? And the answer is the first half of the pasuk of 22, when it says he will become tameh, and the implication is for 7 days. That's when they're all touching. When the second guy is touching the dead person and the third guy is touching the second person at the same time, then yes, he transmits tumah for 7 days. But the end of the pasuk that says someone who touches will be tameh only till the nighttime, that is if the second guy is no longer touching the dead body. And so that is a nice reconstruction that answers the questions. Amalu Rava, lava mina lechu, la titlu be buke sirike berav Nachman. Rava, however, was not happy with this answer that the students said in the name of Rav Nachman. He says, didn't I already tell you, don't hang empty pictures on Rav Nachman? Meaning the answer that you gave is like empty pictures. It looks like nice, but go look inside and you'll see these pictures are nothing. And don't assume that, Rav Nachman said it. You're quoting Rav Nachman. But Rav Nachman didn't really say such a thing. I'll tell you what Rav Nachman actually said. Hachi amar Rav Nachman, safek tumah b'reshut harabim, hitir lahen. Rav Nachman says no. Of course, if you're touching a dead body and you know for sure there's a dead body right there and someone touches it, then the person is tameh. There's nothing to talk about. There's no leniency. That's a deoraita law. Rather, we're talking about a safek. What if someone is walking on the road and he goes over some area that maybe there's a dead body that's that's buried there, and there's an overhang, and he's not sure, did he pass by it or not? Did he go slightly to the right or to the left? Is there really a dead body there or not? So when you have a safek regarding whether you got tumat met, so the law is that in Reshut Harabim, you can be lenient. That was the leniency that Yosef ben Yoezer gave. If you're in a private domain, if you go into someone's private land, and then you're not sure, did I walk this way or that way? You have to be machmir. And so we thought that we should be machmir everywhere, just in case. There's a chance. You know you walked nearby here. Maybe you walked in a place where there's a dead body, so maybe you're tameh. So before Yosef ben Yoezer, they said, well, you have to assume you're tameh. And he said, no, if it's in a public domain, then you can be lenient. Hold on. We don't need Yosef ben Yoezer to teach us this law because we can learn it from Sotah. The law of Sotah, it tells us that if a husband tells his wife, I don't want you to be secluded with that guy, and then she goes and she is secluded with that guy. Now, we don't know what happened while they were secluded. If they actually had intercourse while they were secluded, then certainly she would be prohibited to her husband. But maybe not, and maybe it's okay. So what do we say? Since they're in seclusion, that's a private domain, we assume the worst until she drinks the sotah water. But she's prohibited to be with her husband after that. So when it comes to a safek that's in a private domain, we say lechumra, and then you have to go and do the whole procedure in order for her to be able to go back to her husband. So since that's only in seclusion, if she's not in seclusion with that guy, but she's talking to him out in public, then there's no problem. So we can learn from here that a safek in a private domain is lechumra, but a safek in a public domain is likula. We are lenient. Ha'amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha ve'en morin ken v'ta'ihu ve'oreh le'oruyeh. Rabbi Yochanan said that this is the halacha that we learn from Sotah, but we don't teach it in practice. So Rabbi Yochanan only said this is a theoretical law, but not in practice. And Yosef ben Yoezer came and said, you know what? We can put this into practice. So that was the leniency that he said regarding someone who his point is, if you definitely touched a dead body in a public domain, then you're tameh. But if you have a safek, it's okay, don't worry about it. Tanyana mehachi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, korot na'as lahem ve'amar, ad kan reshut harabim, ad kan reshut hayachid. We have a braita that supports this, because the braita says that Rabbi Yehuda says about Yosef ben Yoezer that he would put stakes in the ground for people to make a demarcation. Until here is a public domain. Until here is a private domain. So that people would know, if you were walking over here on this side of this marker in the ground, oh, that's a Reshut Rabim, you can be lenient. On the other side, that's a Reshut Rabim, you can be lenient. On the other side, the Reshut Yachid. There, if you have a doubt, then you have to be stringent. So you see, he actually put this law into practice. When the people came to the Bianai asking him about a safek, he says, listen, we went to this road in the public domain, and we're not sure if there was a grave there or not, if we went over the grave or not. He would say, look, there's a nice river. Go jump in the lake. Literally. In other words, why you want to put yourself into doubt? Just go and go to the mikveh and be tahor. So Rabbi Yana himself was stringent for himself and anyone who would ask him, even though Yosef ben Yoezer said that we can in fact be lenient. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.